Welcome back to the channel. Some things in this world simply defy explanation, leaving us haunted by questions, chills, and fear. What you're about to hear is one of those stories, a first-hand account of an encounter with something that goes beyond what we understand. If you're into strange, creepy, and paranormal tales, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Now brace yourself. This story is not for the faint of heart. The November night was colder than any I'd experienced. A sharp wind cut through the trees, carrying with it the earthy, damp scent of decaying leaves. Despite the chill sinking into my bones, I felt an electric excitement as I drove down the narrow dirt road winding through the backwoods of Michigan. It was the heart of Dogman territory. I had researched for months, chasing stories of a creature half man, half wolf, with glowing eyes and a mouthful of teeth, sharp enough to rip through bone. A legend, or so I thought. The road was barely visible in the darkness. My car's headlights barely lit more than a few feet ahead, leaving the forest beyond in pitch black. Shadows flickered along the edge of the road, branches twisting and bending in the wind. Despite the heater in my car, I felt a cold sweat begin to form on my neck. There was a tension in the air, a sensation that was hard to describe, like the forest was aware of me, like something was watching. Finally, after what felt like hours, the road ended. My headlights illuminated a small, decaying cabin ahead, barely standing amidst the thick skeletal trees. This was the location people claimed was haunted by the Dogman. Some said they'd heard its howls echoing in the night. Others claimed to have seen its shadowy figure lurking at the cabin's edge. And a few unfortunate souls had reported looking into its glowing yellow eyes, only to feel a terror so deep they never returned to those woods. I'd heard enough stories to know this was dangerous, but I had to see it for myself. I parked the car, switched off the engine, and grabbed my equipment. I had my flashlight, an old camera slung around my neck, and a voice recorder in my pocket. The silence was immediate and unnerving. As soon as I opened the door, no chirping insects, no rustling of leaves, just a thick, stifling quiet that pressed down on me, as if the forest itself was waiting. I shook it off, chalking it up to nerves, and closed the car door softly, trying not to disturb the silence any more than I already had. With my flashlight cast in a narrow beam, I began walking toward the cabin. The air was so cold, I could see my breath forming clouds in front of me, dissipating into the darkness. Shadows shifted and twisted at the edge of my light, making the trees look like they were reaching out, their branches clawing toward me. Each step felt heavier than the last, and the silence only grew deeper, as if the forest were swallowing every sound I made. As I reached the steps of the cabin, a low, menacing growl shattered the silence, coming from somewhere behind me. My heart seized, and I froze, gripping the flashlight tightly. It was a deep, guttural sound, filled with a raw, primal menace. The sound vibrated through me, a sensation so powerful it felt like the growl was coming from the darkness itself. I slowly turned, shining my flashlight back down the path, but there was nothing, just darkness and the faint shapes of the trees. Taking a shaky breath, I tried to calm my nerves. It was probably just an animal, I told myself, but my hands were trembling. I forced myself to turn back toward the cabin, willing my legs to carry me up the creaky steps to the front door. It was barely hanging on its hinges, leaning as if it might collapse at any moment. My flashlight caught glimpses of the inside, bare wooden floors covered in dust, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling, and what looked like a broken chair lying in the far corner. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of mold and decay. But then, just as I was about to step inside, I heard it again. That same deep growl, only closer this time. My skin prickled with dread as I slowly turned around, shining my flashlight into the forest. And then, just at the edge of the light, I saw it. It was tall, impossibly tall, standing on two legs with a muscular frame that was distinctly human, yet twisted, wrong. Its skin was covered in dark fur, matted and dirty, and its head was unmistakably that of a wolf, with pointed ears and a snout lined with teeth, so sharp they glinted in the faint light. But it was the eyes that held me captive. They glowed a sickly yellow, piercing through the darkness, locking onto me with an intelligence that was terrifyingly human. I couldn't breathe. My body felt like it was made of lead, my feet rooted to the spot. The creature's gaze bore into me, unblinking, like it was studying me, deciding whether I was worth the chase. And then it grinned, revealing a mouthful of fangs, dripping with saliva. A chill ran down my spine as the realization hit me. It was enjoying this, savoring my fear. My survival instincts finally kicked in, and I turned, bolting toward the cabin. I barely made it inside before I heard a heavy thud against the door, followed by the sound of claws scraping along the wood. I threw myself against the door, bracing it with my weight, though I knew it wouldn't hold for long. My heart was pounding so loudly, I could barely hear anything else. But I could feel it, the presence outside, the weight of it pressing against the door, each scratch deliberate and slow. And then came the sniffing, a low snuffling sound, as though it were testing the air, searching for me through the thin cracks in the wood. I clamped my hand over my mouth, trying to keep my breathing quiet. But every small sound seemed to echo in the suffocating silence. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, and then the door began to splinter, the wood cracking under the weight of something massive pressing against it. I backed away, glancing around the cabin, desperate to find anything to block the door. But there was nothing, just a single broken chair, rotting floorboards, and the ever-present smell of decay. I heard a sickening crunch and the door gave way a few inches, the creature's eyes peering through the gap, glowing in the darkness. I could see its mouth twisted into that horrible grin, saliva dripping from its fangs. It let out a low, guttural growl, a sound that reverberated through the room and made my stomach churn. I backed into the far corner, my eyes locked on the door, waiting for it to break through completely. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the scratching stopped. Silence fell, once again, heavier than before. The creature was gone. At least, that's what I tried to tell myself. But the silence was suffocating, pressing down on me, amplifying every little sound. I strained my ears, listening for any sign that it was still outside, but there was nothing. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. My heart was pounding in my chest, my mind racing with a mix of terror and disbelief. Had it really given up? Or was it just biding its time, waiting for me to make a move? I waited in the corner, eyes darting from the broken door to the shattered window, every nerve in my body on edge. The silence stretched on, filling the cabin like a dense fog, making it hard to breathe. And then, just when I thought it was over, I heard a faint scraping sound coming from the other side of the cabin. It was moving around the outside, circling me, its claws dragging along the walls in a slow, deliberate pattern. The sound grew louder, closer, as if it were searching for a way in, testing the weak points of the cabin. I pressed myself further into the corner, trying to make myself as small as possible, every instinct screaming at me to stay still. And then it stopped. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest, waiting for the next sound.